Good evening, everyone. I hope you've had a good start to your week. So, this week or last week, you looked at this first group of Psalms of David in Book 2 of the Psalter. And the juxtaposition of Psalm 51 and Psalm 52 really struck me this time. In Psalm 51, David shows us how to pray when we have sinned, when we have offended someone else, when we have sinned against God. The posture of those prayers is confession and genuine repentance. But then in Psalm 52, we get a glimpse of how to pray when we have been sinned against, when others have wounded and hurt and offended us. And Psalm 52 basically shows us the two sides of that kind of prayer. The first is an honest acknowledgement of the wickedness and the pain that we have experienced because of that wickedness. But the flip side of that is a refusal to take vengeance and a trusting deposit of that hurt and that injustice into the hands of a just God who promises that the righteous will flourish. And the interesting thing about Psalm 52 is that there's a superscription. There's a little introduction before verse 1 in our English versions that links this psalm to a particular episode early in David's life. And you can read about that in 1 Samuel chapters 21 and 22. But it seems to me that there's another episode in David's life much later, near the end of David's life, really in the darkest season of David's life, where we see the fruit of David's practice of praying this kind of prayer. David's had a long history with the Lord and a long career that has given him multiple opportunities to choose how he will respond and how he will pray in situations where he is the quote unquote victim, where he is sinned against. And so late in life, we see the fruit of David's pattern. And you can find these two, there's two parts to this episode in 2 Samuel, chapters 16 and 19. So let's go to 2 Samuel, chapter 16. And the context here is that David's family is in utter chaos. One son has been murdered by another, a daughter has been raped by a son, and the murderer has usurped David's throne and has publicly dishonored him in a very crude and vindictive way. And so David finds himself actually fleeing Jerusalem, unsure of what his future holds. And so it's on his way out of Jerusalem, burdened with the knowledge not just of the political turmoil, but of his family turmoil, that he has an encounter with a man named Shimei. So we're going to read this passage. It's 2 Samuel 16, beginning at verse 5. And I want you to pay attention to how David responds in this episode. When King David came to Bahurim, a man of the family of the house of Saul, notice who this is, came out, whose name was Shimei, son of Gera. He came out cursing. He threw stones at David and at all the servants of King David. Now all the people and all the warriors were on his right and on his left. Shimei shouted while he cursed, "Out! Out, murderer, scoundrel! The Lord has avenged on you all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. And the Lord has given the kingdom into the hand of your son Absalom. See, disaster has overtaken you, for you are a man of blood." Notice there are half-truths in here. David has shed blood, and as we saw in Psalm 51, he has repented of that. But David behaved over and over again honorably towards King Saul while Saul was still alive, sparing his life on more than one occasion. So the blood of Saul and Jonathan is not on David's head or on his hands, as Shimei accuses. Now listen to verse 9. Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said to the king, "Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and take off his head." But the king said, "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? If he is cursing because the Lord has said to him, 'Curse David,' who then shall say, 'Why have you done so?'" David said to Abishai and to all his servants, "My own son seeks my life. How much more now may this Benjaminite? Let him alone, and let him curse, for the Lord has bidden him. It may be that the Lord will look on my distress, and the Lord will repay me with good for this cursing of me today." David refuses to take vengeance on Shimei, and he refuses to allow his partidarios, his entourage, to do vengeance on his behalf. And David trusts, even though he's struggling to trust, he says, maybe God will have mercy on me, but he is further along the road to trusting in God's mercy, far enough that he restrains his hand from doing vengeance against Shimei. And not only once, but again in chapter 19 of 2 Samuel, when the political chaos has been somewhat put in order, although at a high cost. David has lost yet another son. And David is returning to Jerusalem to take up his throne, but wrapped in grief because of his personal losses. Shimei comes out again, but this time he's groveling because he recognizes that the one he cursed is still the king. So 2 Samuel 19, beginning in verse 16. Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjaminite from Bahurim, hurried to come down with the people of Judah to meet King David. With him were 1,000 people from Benjamin, and Ziva, the servant of the house of Saul, with his 15 sons and his 20 servants, others who had spoken harshly against David, rushed down to the Jordan ahead of the king while the crossing was taking place, to bring over the king's household and to do his pleasure. Shimei, son of Gera, fell down before the king as he was about to cross the Jordan, and he said to the king, "May my lord not hold me guilty, or remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king not bear it in mind. For your servant knows that I have sinned. Therefore, see, I have come this day, first of all the house of Joseph, to come down to meet my lord the king." Whether he's sincere in his repentance or not, we don't know. But he comes to David expressing remorse. Now listen up. Here's Abishai again. Abishai, son of Zeruiah, answered, "Shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed?" And David responds exactly as he did the first time. "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should today become an adversary to me? Shall anyone be put to death in Israel on this day? For do I not know that I am this day king over Israel?" The king said to Shimei, "You shall not die." And the king gave him his oath. In this episode, or these two episodes with Shimei, we see David living out the prayers that he expressed in Psalms like Psalm 52. And so we see embodied in David how our prayer life can shape our interactions with other people, how it can shape the patterns of our behavior, how it can shape our attitudes towards those who come against us. And so I encourage you, if this kind of praying in adversity, this kind of praying when you've been offended or wounded or hurt, if that's not already your MO, your prayer MO, I encourage you to take Psalm 52, memorize it, internalize it, let it shape you so that when you do come up against a Shimei or a Ziba or a Doeg, the Edomite, as David did, that you will have David's kind of tools for responding in those situations. God bless you.